What's up, and welcome into the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and this week is Rankings Week, where we are going to update the classes of 2025 and 2026. But before we get to that, make sure you like, subscribe, and do all those things you do if you're watching us on the 24/7 Sports channel. All right, let's lay out what this show is going to entail. We are going to talk about the updated national rankings in the rising senior class of 2025. Then we are going to talk about the rising junior class of 2026 and those updated rankings. Last but not least, we're going to talk about some NBA draft intel because the draft itself is only 8 days away. This is one of the busiest and most fun times of the calendar, in my opinion. Before we get into the rankings, though, I want to remind people, this is what you can expect here from us at 24/7 Sports. We've got a certain standard of credibility that we hold ourselves to. First and foremost, you can expect us to be totally unbiased. We don't care what circuit somebody plays on. We're not affiliated with anybody. We're just trying to see as many of the best players play in as many different settings as we possibly can to make the best determination. Second thing you can expect is that we're going to understand levels, meaning we're going to understand the level that we're watching and projecting to. I've never understood how anybody could rank or evaluate college basketball prospects if they don't understand college basketball itself. Third and finally, we're going to be in the gym. We're going to put in the time. If you are on the grassroots circuit in any way, shape, or form, it's a pretty good bet that you've seen us, whether it's myself, Eric Bossi, Travis Branham, Deshaun London, Brandon Jenkins. We are out and about making sure that we see this firsthand and putting in that sweat equity to know what we're talking about. Again, though, rankings are always subjective. But without further ado, here are the 18 five-star prospects in the national class of 2025. All right, it's going to start with Isaiah Harwell. He's at number 11. Braden Burry's number 12. Jalen Harrelson, 13. Jasper Johnson, Chris Senack, Bryson Tiller, Trey McKinney. All five-star prospects. Let's look at the top 10 now. AJ DeBonsa, the number 1 prospect in the national class of 2025. Cameron Boozer, number 2. Darren Peterson, 3. Darius Acuff, 4. We're going to have lots more on those 4 guys in just a minute. Koa Pete, 5. Caleb Wilson, 6. Nate Ament, the 7th-ranked prospect in the national class. We are going to be talking about him more in this show as well. Mikkel Brown at 8. Will Riley at 9. And Malik Thomas at 10. Now, you may notice that not much has changed atop these rankings, especially in those top 6 spots. But remember, we are approaching the July recruiting period. We've got the USA Basketball 17 and under team about to go to Turkey. We've got 2 Scholastic weekends coming up. So the next 6 weeks are going to bring a lot of movement. And suffice it to say, things have gotten a lot closer. But let's break down the top 4 prospects. We will begin with AJ DeBonsa. This is just a jumbo wing. 6'9" now, 7-foot plus wingspan, over 200 pounds. And you can see the pretty shooting touch right there. More so than any other player in this class, he has an instinct for scoring the ball in ways that translate to the highest level of the game. The other thing that I would say about AJ, this is someone who has had a big rep since he was in 8th grade. And to his credit, he has not yet fallen victim to that early hype. He's continued to get better with each passing year, including this past week at USA Basketball in Colorado, where he continued to show his evolution and growth as a player. So he retains that number 1 spot is the best prospect in the rising senior class. Number 2 is Cameron Boozer. And if AJ DeBonsa is the best long-term prospect, Cameron Boozer is, in my opinion, the surest thing in high school basketball. This guy is so mature. He's so reliable. He knows how to play at a level beyond anybody else. Certainly front court prospect in the game. He just doesn't have any glaring weaknesses. At 6'9", he's a very good ball handler. He can make spot up shots. He's an inside out scoring threat. He has terrific hands, and he is, as you see there, a big time passer, specifically as an outlet passer. Remember, he is one of 2 twin sons of Carlos Boozer, and this is someone who just plays like he's 25 years old and already in the league. Just so reliable every single time he takes the court. The 3rd overall prospect in the class and the number 1 ranked guard is Darren Peterson. Now, when we break down Darren Peterson, we are talking about another big guard. Terrific positional size at 6'5", very long arms, and he's got the strong body on top of that. What separates Peterson, in my opinion, is the versatility in an almost effortless way. He has a terrific understanding of how to get to his spots, whether it's scoring over smaller guys like that, shooting it from behind the three-point line. This is someone who understands how to create space, has terrific versatility, and all of it correlates to the half-court game. This is not someone who thrives exclusively in transition. He knows how to make plays for himself and others at multiple levels in a half-court game, and that is why he is the top-ranked guard in the rising senior class. Now, rounding out the top four is Darius Acuff, who finishes as the top point guard in the national class. And I'm going to be transparent. Acuff was looking at a potential dip in the EYBL season, but he came back with USA Basketball. He starred for the 18 and under team, and he led them to a gold medal. Why? Because he committed to impacting the game, not just with his scoring and playmaking, but also on the defensive end of the floor. This guy is a straight bucket with the ball in his hands, an aggressive scoring lead guard who can score in bunches. But when he's controlling the game and impacting the game on both ends, that is when he is at his best. That's exactly what he did with USA Basketball, and that is why he has retained his spot as a top four prospect and the number one lead guard in the class. All right, with all that done, I'm going to bring in my partners in crime here, Travis Branham and Eric Bossi, because as I said, guys, the top six have stayed the same, but things have gotten a lot closer here. We have some prospects to talk about who have made a jump and may not be done rising. So I want to phrase it to you guys this way. Let's talk about some of the biggest risers. And Trav, I'm going to go with you first because Nate Ament went from 13 to 7. But I think we all agree this jump may just be getting started here as you see some of the other big risers in the national rankings. But Trav, let's start with Nate Ament and talk about what has allowed him to crack the top 10, get that fifth star, and what could allow him to continue climbing in these national rankings.
Yeah, go back just a year ago. Nate broke out onto the national scene playing with Team Loaded, North Carolina. At the time, he was about a 6'7", very long, but very, very thin forward. He could play either the 3 or 4, but what stood out at that time was the touch on his jump shot. He could step out and comfortably make shots, both off the catch and pull. He had 1 and 2 dribble pull-ups at the time. Also was able to flash his playmaking ability and vision, able to see over the top of the defense. And so over the last year, we've been tracking him. I got to see him during the high school season at the John Wall Invitational back in December, where he was spectacular. And one of those questions that people around the industry have had is just how has he been able to handle physicality? Is he a big-time competitor? And while he's kind of a bit emotionless on the court, he's very steady, very even keel. The kid produces in every single setting, and that not only translated in the high school season, where he also showed that he's grown roughly 2 inches, now standing every bit of 6'9". He's continuing to make shots out on the perimeter while expanding his handle and his ability to create off the dribble. And so now you fast forward to what we've been watching with Team Loaded Virginia, an absolutely stacked squad, loaded, no pun intended, but playing with a bunch of different weapons on the offensive end. And he's just been able to show that everything he does, he knows how to play with other talent around him, knows how to fill his roles and make various impacts around the court to impact winning at the end of the day. If you need him to stand out on the perimeter and make shots, he's going to do that. If they need him to defend, he's going to buckle down. He's going to give you whatever he can on the defensive end. He'll rebound. And then if you need him to go get you a bucket, if he has a mismatch on him, you can give him the ball and he's willing to go get you those buckets. So as we project moving forward, he's still really thin. He's still got a baby face. So physically, there's still a ton of upside there. And so the best basketball, he's playing really good basketball right now, but we still imagine the best basketball is ahead of him, which to your point, he might not be done climbing this rankings in the coming months. By the end of the summer, he's already starting to enter that conversation of could he be a top 5 prospect?
Yeah, and if you go to 247sports.com and you see the ranking story, you will see that I was very candid and I said he was right on the doorstep of the top 5, and we considered it. We all considered there were differing opinions within the group, and I think that is certainly a very possible landing spot for him if he continues to progress. To your point, this is someone that you identified well over a year ago and were earlier on him than anyone. But he's continued to grow. He's continued to get better. And yet still he has worlds of untapped potential. So he's someone we are going to be locked in on this summer. All right, boss, I want to ask you about a guy who really has been on the scene, but took it to a new level last week at the NBPA Top 100 camp. And that is Chris Senek. Tell me about this guy, because he's jumping from 47 all the way to 15. He's cracking 5-star status, but he too might not be done climbing if what we saw last week holds up. So what do you like about this guy?
Yeah, Chris is a guy that we've known for a while. He's been in our top 50, and I think the climb for him really started earlier this spring when he was playing with his summer team YGC on the Puma circuit. But what we've seen is a kid who has always shown a lot of talent in terms of length, ability to run the floor, athleticism, and some face-up ability. But what he's doing now is, he's kind of all coming together, and he's playing aggressive. He's playing with a motor, and he's really showing that he can be a true mismatch problem. And he's a guy that out in space is just so difficult to defend. At last week's NBPA Top 100 camp, he caused so many problems for other bigs because they just couldn't keep up with him in transition, and he was just able to get by everybody. Now add in that he can shoot the ball. And I think, Adam, you and I had this discussion.
Yeah, I was just going to bring this up. Yeah.
We think that he's a guy ultimately may really, in college, he's probably going to play a lot of 5 just due to his size, and there's not many 5s out there. But if we're looking at his skill set and what translates to the next level, I think he's a guy who's legitimately showing himself to be a 4-man with real face-up ability and some real versatility, and a guy who, while not a perfect comparison, is starting to show me some signs of a young Jabari Smith.
All right. Interesting. Well, he is up to 5-star status, climbing from 47 to 15. All right. If you followed me online or if you watched this show, you're not going to be surprised by this. The biggest riser for me, jumping over, let's see, quick math, 70 spots, Braylon Mullins from 94 to 24. I was blown away by this guy when we saw Indiana Elite in 3 SSB, because not only is he a big time shooter, but this guy's got some stuff to him, as we say. I mean, he is tough. He's scrappy defensively. He's got some lift at the rim. He checks a lot of boxes. And as I said on a recent show, having seen him so early in the spring, as I traveled to different circuits in subsequent weeks, the question I asked myself when I watched almost every other guard is, are you better than Braylon Mullins? Are you better than Braylon Mullins? So, and then I posed the question to you guys, like, hey, are we putting too much on this kid right now? Are we moving him all the way up into the top 20 too much too soon? And you both said to me the same thing. You both said, no, he deserved it. So I think we've all seen the same thing. Braylon Mullins and Boss, this reminds me, I thought of this yesterday. Remember 2 years ago when Elmarco Jackson made a big jump, and you said to me in a recruiting rankings meeting, you said, you know what you're doing, right? You're making him a McDonald's All-American. Well, Braylon Mullins is now in that range where those kind of accolades are now realistic. They're certainly not guaranteed, but I think he's in that category of guys who have a realistic chance to play his way into some of the most prestigious games in high school basketball. Either one of you have anything to add on Braylon?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. Just that the sniper aspect of his game combined with the size and some real ability to go and create a shot off a dribble without having to pound the ball into oblivion is a real standout key.
And he defends too. All right, that's enough about Braylon Mullins. Trav, I want to ask you about one other guy, another big riser, Will Riley. Now, this is someone that I raved about during the high school season. Bossi's been a long-standing fan. He's put up huge numbers this year in the EYBL, and now he's up to number 9 in these most recent 2025 national rankings. He's got a commitment scheduled for next week. My question for you, Trav, is he going to stay in the 2025 national rankings, or what can you tell us about the intel leading up to his decision?
Yeah, the information leading up to Will Riley's decision. I'm a betting man. I am betting that he ends up in the 2024 class, and barring any changes between now and Sunday when that decision is set to be announced, I'm putting my bet on the Illinois Fighting Illini at this moment. Now, still not necessarily counting out the likes of Alabama, potentially even Kentucky making a late run here. But because after all, it is the NIL era, things can change extremely quickly. But as things stand today, I am anticipating that he will end up in 2024, and that we will be seeing him in that orange Illinois jersey next season.
All right, now that would be the 4th reclass just in the last few weeks here. If you look at Josan San and Aswin Ernhunwunsi and Mustafa Thiem. So 4 different potentially prospects if Will Riley is to go ahead and reclassify to 2024. That would open up a spot in these rankings. we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. All right, guys, before we turn our attention to the rising junior class of 2026, remember you can check out 247sports.com. We've got wall-to-wall team coverage, recruiting rankings, newly updated in the class of 2025. You can see the entire 150 right there. And of course, nobody covers the transfer portal better. Travis Branham heading up that coverage all year long. Make sure you can find it all there, 247sports.com. All right, without further ado, let's now turn our attention to the class of 2026. And this was a tough one, guys, because we made a big switch in number one in January. And Tyron Stokes was the reigning number one, but we liked what we saw from Brandon McCoy, and we elected to make that switch. So, Boss, I'm going to go to you first here. Tell us who the number one player is in the rising junior class right now and why.
Tyron Stokes has reclaimed the number one spot in the class of 2026. And when we all sat down and discussed it, it boiled down to it's not a case of McCoy losing it or us having any less belief in McCoy. It's a matter that Tyron went out and the way that he played, it was just hard to sit there and look and say, you know what? How do we justify not making him the top ranked player right now? He's been so physically dominant. His skills have really come around. And he's a guy that's, become one of the most feared players in high school basketball, regardless of class. And, pretty much any gym he walks into, he's the baddest dude on the floor, and he's the one guy that people can't stop. So based on his performance this spring, we really felt that we couldn't deny him the number one spot at this point.
And I want to give him credit in three main areas that I think we've seen significant growth in. I think his approach, we've seen some maturation for him in recent months. He's competing. I think he's in the best shape of his life. He's so powerful. He's so strong, but he looks quicker, more explosive to me than ever before. And I think his shooting has really progressed as well. So those three areas to me, I think we've seen significant growth in recent months. So that is a tribute to him and the people around him. But Boss, you said it here. This is not a knock or a criticism on Brandon McCoy, who retains the number 2 ranking in that class. And Trav, you have been a fan of McCoy, and here are the updated top 10 in the national class of 2026. Tyron Stokes is number 1, Brandon McCoy number 2, Caleb Holt number 3, Elijah Arenas, who's now almost 6'6", number 4, Jason Crow number 5, Taja Reza 6, Mustafa Diop 7, Jordan Smith 8, Caleb Gaskins 9, and Ikenna Alozie is at 10. We're going to talk about some of those guys in just a minute. But Trav, I want to ask you about Brandon McCoy, because this is someone who I think we can't emphasize this enough. The narrative should not, and cannot be about him falling, because he's doing nothing but trending in the right direction. Tell me what you like about Brandon McCoy, or what people at home need to know about this talented young guard.
Yeah, he's got tremendous positional size, standing roughly 6'4". He's really long. And as you can see on the screen, he's a really impressive athlete, and he's very functional in that athleticism on both ends of the floor. There's a lot of times we see these athletes come through high school. You see them exploding in layup lines and putting up stuff on the highlight reels in transition. But this is a kid that can operate in traffic, get to his spots, elevate in traffic. And what's always stood out to me about him is how he plays on both sides of the basketball. There's so many times where some of the biggest highlights in a game out of Brandon McCoy aren't offense, but it's the stuff he's doing on defense, coming off the help side, blocking shots at the rim, or elevating in traffic and just snatching rebounds before pushing the break. So it's the ability that he has to play on both sides, the instincts that he shows, and the creativity, both as a playmaker and as a scorer, as well as just the maturity he plays with. You never go out there and you watch Brandon McCoy and be like, man, he was just out there, I would say, hunting shots for himself. Like, he was just out there looking to make a highlight reel for himself. You never come away thinking he was playing selfish basketball. He plays the right way. And when you add in all the talent and the productivity he continues to show on every single setting, whether it be high school, AAU, or at USA basketball, he just brings it every time. And like you said, Tyron Stokes, he just flat out went out and won this number 1 spot, while Brandon McCoy has done nothing wrong but just continue to compete.
Another thing to note, Tyron Stokes, Brandon McCoy, AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, they are all in Colorado Springs right now at the Olympic and Paralympic training facility, trying out For the USA Basketball 17 and under team, I think all four of those guys are probably locks, not because it's political, just because they're better than everybody else, quite frankly. And they will travel to Turkey for the FIBA World Cup. And that is a setting that I'm really interested in watching, seeing all these guys in the same team. They've been absolutely dominant over the years. It's going to be a fun one to follow. All right, guys, now I want to shift the attention because we've talked a lot about Stokes and McCoy, but I want to talk about the other players in this class that people need to know. One of those was also in Colorado this past week. Bossi, you and I saw him, and I was blown away, as I know you were, by Taj Ariza.
Yeah, Taj is a guy that I have been talking up since I very first saw him before his freshman season in high school started. For those who don't know, if the last name sounds familiar, yes, he is the son of longtime NBA player and former UCLA Bruin Trevor Ariza. He's a wing that in his bare feet is just over 6'7". He's got that 7-foot wingspan. He can really, really handle the ball. He's got a gorgeous looking jump shot. And the thing about Taj is he just moves differently than other guys out there. When you go out there and watch them, he's immediately going to catch your eyes as like, wow, that guy looks and moves like a pro. Like there's just something different about him. And he's always had the ability, and he's always given it to us in flashes. And there's still room for him to be much more consistent. But these last couple of months, and especially USA Basketball these past few days, he's just turned it up to another level. He's become a confident jump shooter. He makes really good reads as a ball handler. He's just so versatile and so fluid with his size that he's a guy who has moved up to number 6. We already had him in the top 10. But if he continues on the trend that he's on, he is a guy that can compete for not only the top 5, which he's knocking on the door of, but maybe even the top 3 of this class. And he can put himself in that discussion with Tyron Stokes and Brandon McCoy. He's got that much ability. When that guy plays with confidence, he is something different to deal with.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And again, people who followed us at home know that you guys watch the underclassmen more than I do, so I don't have the same context. But just on the surface this week, I thought his upside was no less glaring than some of those other guys. So as you said, he's inside the top 10 now, but just like Nate Ament, Chris Senek in the rising senior class, I think Taj Ariza is someone in this rising junior class who could continue to move up if he keeps progressing along those same lines. All right, Trav, who is the rising junior in this class that you want to bring attention to as someone who is likely to make a bigger name for himself in the weeks and months to come?
Yeah, I have to give credit to Bossi here. He just apparently is a magnet for talented 6'7" wings. And this one is Anthony Thompson. Plays for the Indiana Elite under 16 team. Again, 6'7" wing, lefty with a smooth stroke from 3, able to make shots both off the catch and pull. Is showing some creativity as a scorer to create from mid range, get to the rim. And so this is a guy that we're just now starting to become more and more familiar with. So you never want to be too aggressive when it comes to a debut in the rankings. While he is coming in as a top 15 recruit, we are going to be keeping a very close eye on him moving forward because, like Taj Ariza, I don't think Anthony Thompson is done climbing these rankings yet. So, again, impressive talent, and credit to Eric Bossi here for going out and finding another big-time player in 2026.
All right, one player that I want to bring attention to is already ranked inside the top 5, and that's Jason Crow. This guy is as skilled with the basketball as anyone I have seen thus far in the class. He, too, was in Colorado this past week, and the totality of his skill set was on full display. He's already put up huge high school numbers at a stage where most guys his age aren't even on varsity. But his handle is just super tight. His shot making is off the charts. And his ability to get to his spots, even among players who are a little more naturally explosive, was second to none. There were some moments this week where you thought he was caught in a tough spot. He was running a pick and roll. The pick and roll gets trapped, and all of a sudden he whips the ball behind his back and through his legs, splits the pick and roll, and now he's got a 4-on-3 going the other way. So this is certainly one of the best guards in the class and someone that fans are going to want to familiarize themselves with going into the second half of his high school career. All right, fellas, as always, thank you for your time and your expertise. To everybody watching, if you're here for the rankings, you know where to go, 247sports.com. And when it comes to this show, we are going to be here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Central Time, live on the 24/7 Sports channel. You're watching the 24/7 Sports College Basketball Show, but don't go anywhere yet because we've still got NBA draft to talk. All right. let's talk about the draft. We are now almost a week away. And last week we did a first segment, NBA draft intel. We're going to do that again this week. It's just a collection of what I'm hearing in the last 7 days and run down some of the news and rumors that could be impacting everyone's mock draft. Let's start with the Atlanta Hawks, the team that has the number 1 pick in the draft. Well, Alex Sarr may be the betting favorite to be the number 1 overall pick, but in the last few days, you're hearing a lot of rumor that it may not be Sarr whose name is picked first. In fact, there's some rumors that Atlanta has cooled on Sarr, preferring players like Zachary Reese-Shea, maybe Donovan Clingan, even Reed Shepherd. But it will be interesting to see exactly what happens there. You're hearing that Sarr's representation may even not favor Atlanta. So exactly where these rumors are coming from, we don't quite yet know, but we do know that there is now a steady diet of intel suggesting that Alex Sarr is not the no-brainer that many people expect for Atlanta. My pick to go number 1 overall in my most recent mock on CBSSports.com is the player you just watched, and that's Zachary Reese-Shea. But I want to make it very clear. We don't know who's going to go number 1 yet. As I said, Atlanta, they're believed to like Reese-Shea. He's worked out there. They're believed to like Clingan. He worked out there. Steph Castle is expected to come in and work out. Reed Shepherd is another one that I'm hearing that they are high on. Modest Buzelis is in to work out. So you've got at least 6 prospects who Atlanta has brought in to work out. They are doing their due diligence on a wide number of players, and that is to be expected for a team that was not anticipating being in this position. Remember, they were the big winners on the draft lottery night. Now they find themselves with the number 1 pick. You also cannot count out the potential for trades. I think there's a lot of scenarios there where they could potentially trade down, especially if Sarr is not the guy that they want. Speaking of the trade rumors, Donovan Clingan is going to be one of the more interesting players to watch in this draft. There are a couple of teams that are being very active trying to trade up to draft the UConn big man. Memphis and Chicago in particular, I am hearing, are making significant attempts to move up to a position where they could draft Clingan. Now, this is interesting because, as we said last week, while Clingan is an option for Atlanta at 1 and he's an option for Washington at 2, there's a variety of places inside the top 7 that are not expected to be potential destinations for him, specifically because they already have their centers of the future. He's not going to go to Houston, where they have Alperen Sengun. He's not going to go to San Antonio, where they have Victor Wembanyama. He's not going to go to Charlotte, where they have Mark Williams, or at least that's what the intel's telling us now. So that puts us in a position where we say, all right, maybe he goes 1, maybe he goes 2, maybe there's a trade, whether Atlanta trades down or Memphis and Chicago trades up, putting them in a position to deal for him. Potentially Houston at 3, that's somebody to watch. But if nothing happens, as I said last week, it is conceivable that he slips all the way to 7, and what a break that would be for Portland to be able to land Donovan Clingan. But again, the intel is right now Chicago and Memphis making very clear attempts to move up in the draft with hopes of taking Clingan, with Houston being a potential trade partner there. That is certainly something to watch. As it relates to Memphis, Memphis is well known to be in the market for a big man. Just said, they are trying to trade up. They would love to get Donovan Clingan, but if they can't trade up, I'm hearing they could be open to trading down. 2 prospects that have reportedly had good workouts for them, Purdue's Zach Edey and Indiana's Kel'el Ware. Now, Indiana's Kel'el Ware has been one of the most polarizing prospects over the years. Remember, he was a 5-star prospect out of high school, went to Oregon, began in the starting lineup, but eventually fell out of the rotation, went into the transfer portal last year, transferred to Indiana, and really played some of his best basketball this season. He ended up putting up great numbers in the tail half of the season, and now you're seeing him start to climb up NBA mock drafts. Now, the intel on Ware is very much the same as it has been since high school. A kind of a high risk, high reward proposition. If everything clicks, there just aren't a whole lot of 7-footers who have his tools. You're talking about somebody who can move, he can run, he can jump, he can catch, he's got touch that goes out to the 3-point line. So supposedly had a good workout in Memphis. They can't trade up for Donovan Clingan. Maybe they trade down and look at Kel'el Ware. Again, Zach Edey, another one who supposedly worked out well in Memphis. So I would expect Memphis to be very active here in the next 8 days, again, exploring opportunities to both trade up or trade down in hopes of maximizing their assets and coming up with their big man of the future. All right, for the latest in the NBA draft intel and my latest mock draft, you can visit cbssports.com. We have everything there. You can also watch the Eye on College Basketball podcast on their YouTube channel for more podcasts and information. all the latest leading up to the draft on June 26th and 27th, where we will have live coverage on CBS Sports HQ and all the CBS properties. Until then, and until next week, remember Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, the day before the draft, we will be live with the next episode of 24/7 College Basketball Show. Until then, thanks very much for watching.